fighting on the front lines in the east, and a lot of attention here in Lviv is turning to the south of the country and the southeast of the country, where the shelling and the attacks have been heaviest, particularly Mariupol, which has been besieged for several weeks, and also the southern town of Zaporizhia. And that's where our correspondent Weir Davis reports from a warning, though. You may find some details in his report distressing.
This is what Vladimir Putin's war has done to the children of Ukraine. In his hospital bed, little Artem stares into emptiness. The Russian shell that blasted shrapnel into his belly also wounded his parents and grandparents as they fled from Mariupol, a victim of the war and not yet 3 years old. Next to Artem, 15-year-old Masha, also from near Mariupol. Her right leg amputated after being torn apart by the blast from a Russian shell last Tuesday. She and Artem, in some senses, are lucky. They've been evacuated to the city of Zaporizhia. Other victims, adults and children, died where they fell in the streets. These are just some of the hundreds of casualties of what's been happening in Mariupol and the surrounding region. All of these are victims of Russian attacks. It's not just the physical injuries, though. Many of these children have deep psychological trauma that they will perhaps never get over. These doctors and the children's surviving relatives asked us to tell their stories. Dr. Yuri Borzenko, head of the Children's Hospital, can't hide his contempt for what Russia has done.
I hate Russia. The girl who lost her leg was so traumatized she wouldn't eat or drink for days. She couldn't mentally handle it. We had to feed her intravenously. Another boy, a 6-year-old, with shrapnel in his skull, described, without tears or emotion, watching his mother burn to death in their car after it was hit. He then said, "Dad, buy me a mom. I want someone to walk me to school."
What is happening in Mariupol is a humanitarian disaster, even perhaps a war crime. 90% of the city's buildings have been damaged or destroyed in blanket Russian shelling. After last week's destruction of a theatre where more than 1,000 people were said to be sheltering, reports that an art school with more than 400 people inside has also been attacked. At the hospital, Vladimir wanted to tell me about his daughter Natasha and his granddaughter Dominika, whose picture he almost caressed on his phone. They were both killed by a Russian shell inside Mariupol. I ran up to my granddaughter and I'm screaming, "Dominika, Dominika," but there she lies, says Vladimir. I then rushed to Natasha, grabbing whatever I can find, a scarf, to bandage her legs. Vladimir, whose other daughter is still in a serious condition, knows he has to try and stay strong. God, why would you bring this all upon me, he says. My lovely girls, I failed to protect you. Weir Davis, BBC News, Zaporizhia.
Here, not now. Explosions have felled trees and broken headstones. Alexander Braun, an army volunteer, was killed fighting the Russians 5 days ago, just before what would have been his 27th birthday. Almost no one at the funeral knew Alexander, not the guard of honor or the priest in army green. His commander was the only one from his unit, dressed to go back to the front line only a few miles away. He said they all had to honor him because Alexander's family is not here. His father's in the besieged city of Mariupol. They can't reach him to say his son is dead. Before the war, Alexander was a children's entertainer and illusionist. He went to the front with no real training and was killed less than 2 weeks after he signed up. Close by, graves of people killed fighting Russian-backed separatists since 2014. And these days, the sirens feel routine. It's been quieter the last few days here in the city. The analysis, fear perhaps, is that the Russians are gathering their strength, resupplying, trying to reorganize, getting ready to do something else, to push again at Kyiv. Relative quiet does not mean peace or ceasefire. St. Volodymir's Ukrainian Orthodox Cathedral was heavy with incense and the pain of war. The Orthodox Church here broke with Moscow in 2018. It was a blow for President Putin, who insists that Ukrainians and Russians are one people in one country who should be in one Russian church.
In the north, from Romania to the south. So many people are fleeing Ukraine, it's easy to miss the few returning by river ferry. You still need a ticket if you're going the wrong way. It's a Romanian ship flying the Ukrainian flag as a courtesy. Ivina is one of the passengers, a lawyer from Kyiv. She's just taken her twin children to safety in Germany. Now she's on her way back to fetch her mother.
Ukraine was a great country, but now everything is ruined, and I don't know will stay my house in safety. I don't know when I can come back to Ukraine.
The ferry docks and a dozen or so people disembark. Barely an hour later, the ferry fills with refugees. Irina and her mother Natalia among them. Many are from Odessa, but there are also some from Mykolaiv, the city further east, still blocking any Russian advance along the coast. In Romania, the Ukrainians get a warm welcome.
She was crying that she thinks that we'll never see each other again. I will be happy when I return to Ukraine. I will be happy.
As the sun sets, another ferry embarks from the Romanian shore to bring more Ukrainians across. Nick Thorpe, BBC News, Izakja in the Danube.
To grasp the extent of this catastrophe in Europe. I mean, we have to go back to the Second World War to have anything comparable. And I don't think even at that time you would see that more than 3 million people were displaced per week. I mean, it's 3.5 weeks since this started, and now 10 million people have had to flee their homes, to have to flee all that they hold dear. It is mind-boggling. Still, of course, there are more than 30 million people left behind, and many of them are in crossfire. Many people in Mariupol, in the east of the country, that cannot leave. The devastation is just beyond belief.
What lessons have you drawn from the refugee experience in Syria, which has experienced 11 years of civil war, and what lessons might be useful for this crisis?
Well, there are many similar lessons, really, unfortunately, from these two wars. And the first one is, it's madness to take the war into the cities. This war is now a fighting street by street in urban areas.
A wave of Ukrainians who escaped the war and Russians who say they oppose the conflict are trying to get into the U.S. from Mexico, adding to the humanitarian crisis at our southern border.